Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are at the start of free agency in the 2029 to 2030 offseason. The Royals, coming off a disappointing season, missed the playoffs for the first time since 2024, so playoff streak is done 4 years in a row. We have opened up some potential money for free agency, though. We declined an option on our long-term ace, Trevor Rogers, and we also traded away our longtime closer, Austin Roberts, who was due to be making big money in free agency or in arbitration this coming off season. So have opened up a little bit of cash as we head into the off season, and given that the Royals really underperformed, although we only had the 86 wins, we had the best run differential in the American League and theoretically should have been 96 and 66. Don't feel that we need to make wholesale changes, but obviously moving on from Rogers and Roberts are two pretty significant changes that we've already made in the early stages of this offseason. And as we begin the offseason, one of the holes we had thought we might be looking to fill was backup catcher. MJ Melendez is still our starter. Have him signed for this coming year at $12 million, and then a team option next season or the season after at $12 million. So he is still our starter. Real good defensive catcher. Great personality in the clubhouse, and he has been pretty productive for us offensively over the course of his career, putting up a 115 OPS plus, 114 WRC plus. So an above average offensive player who's a very good defensive catcher. You can see he's been an all-star a couple of times. So happy to have him on board as our starting catcher. I don't know that we really need to chase a backup, though. Fernando Caldera has been the kind of guy in the organization who, now that he is out of option years or will be out of option years, is a likely backup for us. You can see he's played in Omaha the last 3 years, hasn't hit all that much, but he is a respectable defensive catcher who is a below average hitter, but certainly could serve as our backup. We had talked about upgrading him. Probably not going to, though, because Angelo Bolden, who was our number one draft pick 4 years ago, is getting pretty close. Was in Double-A last year, where he hit 299, 19 homers, 71 ribbies. You could see his slightly above average in catcher ability and catcher arm. Obviously would like for him to be a little better defensively than he is, but he looks like he could have a potentially plus bat. That gap power is nice, but given his lack of speed, I don't know, how much he's going to do with that. Still not going to hit a lot of triples, although he did hit 6 last year. Maybe you can get some doubles out of him. But looks like he could be an acceptable major league hitter with a decent glove. We'll probably start him in Triple-A and let Caldera be the backup, initially at least, unless we can, find a real good bargain as we get closer to spring training. And then maybe decide that Caldera is going to stay in Triple-A, and we'll look to have a little bit better backup for Melendez. But I don't think we need to go crazy with the position, because I would think that by the year after next, 2031, Bolden is probably our backup coming out of spring training in 2031. And then as far as who's the starter in 2032, we'll have a debate between a 32-year-old MJ Melendez or, a very cost-effective Bolden. So I don't feel like we need to go crazy at catcher, but if there's a really good defensive catcher who's available in the end of February and not looking for a ton of money, we would certainly consider upgrading from Caldera, but that's not going to be a primary objective this offseason. And the other key position we've been thinking about is shortstop, where if we don't make a big change, we're going to move Witt Jr., our many-time Gold Glove winner at third base. We'd like to have better range at shortstop than Witt will provide us, but his error, arm, and turning double play are all more than adequate and actually very good to exceptional for a shortstop. So if we can deal with plus range for an infielder, but not really the type of range that you'd want for a shortstop. He could slide over there. And then we also did recently pick up with the trade with the White Sox, Jordan Groshans, who can play a competent shortstop. Not much of a hitter, but a decent major league hitter. Pretty versatile. He can play third and short. And you can see he can also play acceptably corner outfield, could definitely play second base for us. So he's kind of our utility infielder and backup. Question is whether we want to potentially try to bring Nikki Lopez back again to play shortstop for us, or find someone else in free agency that would be a defensive upgrade to Witt Jr. But I don't think there's a ton of great options out there. Looking at the free agents that are available, highlighted by Vlad Guerrero Jr., but looking for $38 million a year. Matt Olson, Tim Anderson, we could potentially fit into our budget. The issue is that he's 36 years old, coming off a torn labrum in his shoulder, and he's fragile. His range would be better than Witt Jr. a little bit, but he's actually not as good at anything else defensively. And an acceptable bat, I guess, at this point. I mean, he did hit .317 last year with a 136 OPS plus. So I guess that's denigrating him a bit to say that it's an acceptable bat. He had a very good bat last year, and certainly over the course of his career, as you can see, has put up a 109 OPS plus and a 108 WRC plus. So more than acceptable bat, but I don't know that I want to spend all of that money, basically all of the money we have available on Tim Anderson. But those three, Guerrero Jr., Olson, and Anderson, are the top free agent batters out there. If we kind of look at just the shortstops, not a ton defensively. I mean, Nikki Lopez is still kind of the best defensive shortstop out there. You can see, similar to Tim Anderson, he's got a little bit better range than Witt Jr., but he's going to make less errors. Not a great arm, acceptable at turning double plays, not much of a hitter at this point, and he's looking for $10 million a year and is also fragile. So I don't love either of those options. I think it may be a year to give Witt Jr. an opportunity to see if he can pivot over to short. Kind of a strange move to be making at this point in his career, given that he is 29 years old and going to be turning 30 next year, to kind of move from third to short. But it may be what we need to do. So if we decide not to go for a shortstop, we don't have a ton of huge holes otherwise offensively. I mean, I think the outfield with Frelick in left, Jose in center, Marin in right, then the youngster Vasquez, who came up last year as a potential DH or potentially taking over one of those outfield spots. And then we've also got, Jason Dominguez, Elijah Lambros, Nazir Muley, and a couple other guys in AAA that can also kind of be a fourth or fifth outfielder for us. I don't feel we need to push on bringing in an outfielder, which means that if we're not going to go with a shortstop, the next thing to think about is just bolstering our pitching staff. As I mentioned, we did lose Rogers and Roberts, so our pitching staff, which has been a big strength of this team over basically the entire playthrough, is an area where we've taken a bit of a hit this offseason already. And there's a lot of expensive relief pitchers out there. Not too much in the way of starters. Always good to bring on a starter. Certainly Miles Jansen, Eric Orrs, and then Shane Bieber is a big name. But all of them are looking for bigger money than we would like to pay. The interesting thing is that our buddy Trevor Rogers, who we rejected an $18 million team option on a couple of weeks ago and paid him a $2 million buyout, had said when we talked to him before actual free agency that he was looking for $18 million a year over 3 years. Now he's looking for only $7 million a year. He's definitely not what he was. He's fragile at this point in terms of his injury proneness, but he is a proven pitcher who won 4 All-Star awards and the AL Cy Young back in 2026. He missed the entire 2027 season with injuries when the Royals won the World Series, and you can see he's only combined for about 150 innings over the last 2 seasons since coming back from that injury, and then missed the second half of last season with another elbow injury. But if we can get him for $7 million or less for a short-term contract, he might not be the worst ad for us, simply because I think he can be a slightly above average starter still at this point in his career. And when you look at the money that Spencer Bauer is looking for, and you looked at the fact that Gordon Graceffo, who we picked up in a trade with Milwaukee about a month and a half ago, the big trade, can look at the history of that for those who missed the episode, but that was the Austin Roberts trade where we traded away our longtime ace closer, and we got Gordon Graceffo in return. But Graceffo is going to be a free agent. Spencer Bauer is going to be a free agent. So we're going to be losing potentially 2 of our top starters from this season next offseason. They're both looking for big money already. Graceffo looking for $11 million a year, so that's potentially manageable, although he hasn't proven to be anything better than an average major league pitcher at this point in his career. So $11 million for an average pitcher is maybe market rate, but tough for Kansas City to justify. And then Bauer at this point is looking for $27+ million a year over 9 years, given the injury issues he's had over his career and the fact that he's fragile. Very excited about the fact that he has been a healthy starter for us each of the past 3 years, but that's basically because we've had him on a 90 pitch count during the regular season just to kind of try to nurse him through those regular seasons. I don't feel good about giving him 9 years, close to $28 million a year. So I think there is an argument with the potential loss of both of those players in the offseason. Do we look to bring back Trevor Rogers moments after we thought he was gone for good? And I'm going to at least see what Rogers is looking for. You can see we did make one minor league offer to catcher Abraham Gutierrez. He would be, AAA kind of depth for us, injury backup in case we have some injury issues at catcher at the major league level. Not clear whether he would even sign with us for a minor league contract here in late November or not. But back to Rogers. He's looking for 3 years at $7 million a year with a player option for the 3rd season, given the injury issues he's had. I'd prefer those to be team options, and I'd also prefer to be paying him a little less. He is looking for a bonus if he pitches 160 innings. I don't have a problem with that if we're able to get a full season out of him. I'd happily pay a little more for that, but we'll see if we can structure something that is a little more team-friendly that might bring Mr. Rogers back to the Kansas City neighborhood. All right, we'll see what Rogers thinks of this offer. He was looking for $21 million over 3 years with a player option for the 3rd season. We're offering him an average of 18, or actually not even 18. We're averaging if I could speak, we're offering him an average of $5.5 million a year, so $16.5 million total over 3 seasons with 2 team options. Now we are going to give him a $500,000 bonus if he pitches 162 innings, but it's $1.5 million a year less averaging than he was looking for. Let's see what he thinks. Oh. And of course, I have to give him some money for those team options. That makes sense. I messed that up. Doesn't want to be tied up that long. That doesn't make sense because we're tying up for the same amount of time. It's just team options rather than player options. So we're going to have to offer him a little bit more money, I think, to maybe make something happen. But let's see if we can get something done. All right, we've upped the average value to $6 million a year, still kept in team options for the second and third seasons. We did give him the bonus he was looking for, which was only 2 innings less and an extra $50,000 if he gets there. So this should be a little more palatable to him. Probably still not enough to get it done. Yeah, he has cut his demand a little bit, but we're probably going to have to be a little more aggressive with the amount that we're offering to him. All right, one last try here before we probably have to just meet him very close to his terms. But now we're at $6.5 million average over the 3 years. We're trying to keep in the team options for the second and third seasons. I know he doesn't like that, but the average is only $500,000 less a year than he was originally looking for, and $400,000 a year less than he's looking for now. So yeah, now he only wants a 1-year major league deal, but he's willing to do the 1-year deal at $6.9 million. The whole point of trying to bring him on board was to give us the optionality if we end up losing Bauer and or Graceffo and not being willing to sign them to long-term deals. It would be nice to kind of have a proven starter under option for next year. So I think I'm going to try to keep the team options in there, but really kind of give him closer to the money he's actually looking for. And if we let him go, we let him go. If we pay him the money, we pay him the money. I mean, I guess that's kind of obvious, but we'll go back and we'll give him actually exactly what he was looking for. $7 million a year for 3 years. We're just going to put in team options instead of the player option in season 3, and we're going to keep the bonus in there. So now he's getting the money that he asked for initially. It's just instead of 2 guaranteed years followed by a player option, there would be team options both seasons. So not the best deal for Bauer, but it would be good for us if we could do it. And he's willing to think about it. So probably should have just went there at the beginning, but lock him up for 1 year, and then at least depending on what happens with Bauer and Graceffo, we do have a proven major league starter to hopefully be able to bring back for $7 million next year if we'd like, if we've got holes in the rotation to fill. So we are going to submit the offer to Mr. Bauer and see what happens. All right, we finally gotten some feedback from Rogers. Seems like he likes our offer at this point. Atlanta is supposedly already also interested in him, so certainly a chance that we get into a bidding war on him. Also got an offer from the first baseman, Eli Serrano from the Diamondbacks. Looks like he does have some home run power, but a pretty bad personality, and hit 32 homers last year, and he's hit 38, 29, and 32 homers over the last 3 years, but he's making $5.1 million and going to be a free agent. They're looking for Josh Young, who, if we do pivot Bobby Witt Jr. to short, could very well be our starting third baseman next year. Now you look at the salary for Young and you think, why don't we just hit that trade? The issue is that we got the Cubs to retain 90% of his salary, so we actually have Josh Young next year at a very reasonable contract to potentially play third base for us, or to be a utility infielder if we do end up going in a different direction than Bobby Witt Jr. at shortstop and he ends up back at third. So Serrano's bat is interesting, but his glove is brutal, and I think between Peyton Williams and Vasquez, we've already got a couple of these guys that really don't have any position that they can play defensively. So some of you probably would go for that trade because of the excellent home run power, but I am not going to go for it. I'm going to keep a very cheap Josh Young around for next season. And it sounds like Trevor Rogers now has a better bid from the Braves. The Reds are also interested in him, so the $7 million a year for the next 3 years with team options probably not going to work. Let's see what he's looking for from us now. $9 million a year. We do have the money where we could pay him a bit more. And he does have a team option for the final season, which I like. We may have to guarantee him 2 years and then just do the team option for the third. But given the situation next year where it's unlikely that we're going to be able to bring back both Bauer and Graceffo and could lose both of them, I don't mind potentially guaranteeing him 2 seasons, but I definitely want to keep that team option open for the third year. So he was looking for $9 million a year for 3 years. We're going to give him $8 million a year for those 3 years, and see if he'll go for that. He may have a better option from somebody else out there, but let's see what he has to say. Yeah, offer's not quite good enough. I'd like to be potentially paying him less than he's looking for, but at this point, he's willing to think about that. So he's willing to think about a 3-year deal averaging $8.5 million a year. So we'll submit that offer. I don't know how much of a bidding war we really want to get into on Trevor Rogers at this point, but given that I'm feeling a little better about backup catcher, and I feel that both of the shortstops are just too expensive for what they are at this point, and Tim Anderson and Nikki Lopez, I'm gonna continue viewing Rogers as our top target for free agency this year, at least for the time being. And not surprisingly, our new offer is the best one that he's gotten at this point, but Milwaukee and the Red Sox are now allegedly interested in him also. So we will see what happens in the coming weeks as we try to see, somewhat surprisingly, whether Trevor Rogers may be returning to the team. And now the Yankees are involved. Looks like he says he's getting about $9.1 million a year from the Yankees. Boston and the Padres both also allegedly interested in Mr. Rogers. He's now looking for $10.8 million a year for the next 3 years. I think it's getting to the point where he's probably priced himself out for us. That 4.66 ERA, even before he suffered the elbow injury at the age of 32, doesn't make me feel great about it, which is why I've been so focused on team options. I mean, I think he's clearly getting, a market level contract at this point for a player with his talent. I don't know that I'm going to give the guy an average of $10.8 million a year for 3 years, though. If we're going to offer money to a fragile pitcher in his mid-30s, I'm almost thinking we move on to Nate Pearson, who's supposedly looking for only $1.8 million. Now, he is not Trevor Rogers. Over the course of his career, you can see an 80 ERA plus and a 114 FIP minus, so he's been a below-average major league pitcher. But if we're just looking for depth, he does still feature 4 good to above average pitches, good control, good stuff. His movement's not great, so he's going to give up some homers, as you can see by the 25 he allowed in 28 and the 21 he allowed last season. But he throws hard. I just can't see paying Trevor Rogers $10-11 million a year at this point. If we could bring him back at a discount level, I was really interested, but he's pretty much full market rate at this point. And just kind of looking at our team, I think a younger guy like Graceffo, who I think has some upside left, I'd rather be paying him the $11 million he's looking for if we were to sign him to an extension than be paying Trevor Rogers that kind of money the year after next, given his age and his fragility. And then if we are potentially moving on from Rogers and going a little more cheap, potentially in pitching, question is whether we do want to make an offer to a Nikki Lopez. $10 million a year to bring Nikki back. I just don't see it. He's hit reasonably well the last few years, but he's going to be 35 before the start of the season. He's been a good glove for us. He does have better range than Witt Jr. But if we're going for a stopgap catcher, or a stopgap shortstop, I'd almost rather sign Tim Anderson for a season. He's only got 3 days left to recover from that shoulder injury. Might be worthwhile scouting him just to see if it has really had a big impact on his arm once he's healthy. He's only looking for a 1-year deal, so maybe Tim Anderson is the way to go. Even if he isn't our everyday shortstop, I mean, $11 million is a lot for a utility infielder, but he's still a plus hitter at this point. Good base runner, high work ethic. We don't have Josh Donaldson on our team, so won't be any issues between the two of them. I'm a little intrigued by Tim Anderson right now, so I might sim ahead a couple more days till hopefully he's recovered and then try to scout him. But I don't want to lose him either, so maybe just make an initial offer. I don't think he's going to go for $8 million. That's a lot less than he's looking for. Although he's looking for $1 million bonus also if he gets 550 at-bats. We've at least made an offer to him. Hopefully he'll circle back with us if he gets another offer in the next couple of days. But I think we may be towards the point where we're going to pivot away from Trevor Rogers and maybe to Tim Anderson as our big signing. I'm also going to, for the time being, as I often do, take a little bit out of our scouting and development budgets just to give me a little more money to play with for the free agents here, because I think I am going to also officially start moving on from Mr. Rogers and at least put an offer out for Nate Pearson. I think, $1.8 million would certainly be happy to have him as a little bit of depth around. Oh, interesting, though. Said his contract demand was $1.8 million, but he's now looking for $6.6 million because he's received an offer from the Yankees, just like Trevor Rogers supposedly has. So I don't know that I want to be paying Nate Pearson $6 million. So maybe we see how things materialize. Jonah Doan, kind of more of a bullpen arm in my opinion, and he's been pretty brutal as a starter, or out of the bullpen. Just been pretty brutal at the major league level the last 3 years with a 94, 72, and 66 ERA plus is definitely not heading in the right direction. But I think we may try to pivot right now and focus, after I said we were going to be focused on a starter. I'm intrigued about potentially bringing Tim Anderson into the fold for a season, but I do want to see what he looks like in a few days. So I'm going to wait for that injury to heal and then try to get a scouting report on him before we make a substantive offer to him. And Anderson is healthy now. We've simmed ahead 3 days. You can see we did have a scouting report from him back in late September, so I don't know how much that's really going to have changed, but let's request a scouting report and hopefully find out a little bit more about what our scout thinks he looks like here in December. I don't really know exactly what we're going to learn since he's not playing baseball right now, but maybe we will pick up something from a pre-injury video, or our scout will do some sniffing around the people he's been rehabbing with and see what that arm is looking like at this point. And we've got our scouting report back on Tim Anderson. Our scout still views him as a 4-star player. It doesn't look that we think his arm is any worse. Obviously, we wouldn't have a lot of evidence of that, but since he hasn't been playing since he came back from the injury. But given that he's only looking for a 1-year deal, Ooh, actually, I hadn't noticed this, though. He hasn't played baseball in a whole year. That torn labrum was really serious. He missed all of 2029. Yeah, he was out 14 to 15 months with that torn labrum in his left shoulder. But we just got a scouting report on him. Is he just going to magically not be able to throw anymore? I would think that our scouting report would have picked that up, but, he hasn't played in a year. I'm still willing to bring him on board with a 1-year prove-it contract. I don't know whether... he's the only thing, as I mentioned, that he's better than Bobby Witt Jr. at defensively is range, which is obviously critical for a shortstop. But error, arm, and turning double play, Bobby Witt Jr. is better. So I think it's conceivable that we still end up playing Bobby Witt Jr. at short instead of Anderson. I don't know. Fortunately, we got spring training to figure that out, and we need to bring him on board before it's even an issue. But I do like the contact bat that he has, kind of a different aspect for our offense potentially, and he can play a credible second, third, or short for us. Looks like he could also play center field in a pinch, which actually isn't the worst thing in the world for us if we don't end up having Jason Dominguez up. He'd probably be the best defensive center fielder on our team, actually, behind Jose, who's obviously a excellent defensive center fielder, but he would kind of be our backup center fielder. I know it seems weird to be talking about a potential $10 or $11 million contract for a player who might just be a super utility guy for us, but this upcoming season is the last year that we're going to have Bobby Witt Jr. guaranteed. He's got that big player option for 2031. Could be our last year of Spencer Bauer. Likely will be our last year of Peyton Williams. Could be our last year of Graceffo, Ashby, Dabovich, and even Mackenzie Gore. So we're kind of gearing up, hopefully, for a run back into the playoffs, and then hopefully get into the playoffs and do some damage. And I think Tim Anderson is a bat who could definitely help us. So before we get into the Rule 5 draft today, we are going to try to put another offer out there to Mr. Anderson. Still looking for that $11 million. We've only offered him $8 million, which he had no interest in. If we offer him $9 million with those bonuses for MVP and All-Star, which are pretty unlikely, I would think, particularly MVP, but if we get an MVP season out of him, would be happy to pay him that money. Still looking for more. What if we get it up to $10 million a year instead of the 10.8 he's looking for? Keep the options there for him. He's willing to think about it. So we got an offer out to Tim Anderson. Definitely have pivoted quite a bit so far in this episode from we're going starting pitcher, we're not going shortstop, and now we're chasing after probably the top shortstop that's out there, even though, as I talked about, we're not sure whether we'll actually play him as our starting shortstop. So definitely showing a lot of volatility in my decision making. Would love to hear your thoughts down below as to whether I'm making good decisions or bad through these first opening weeks of free agency. And we've moved up to our pick in the Rule 5 draft now. You can see a few 3-star players out there: Tony Gonsolin, Brian Matoya, Nick Sandlin, Edison Suriel, and Cole Waits. So relievers seem to be the premier players available, even in terms of potential. Only one other guy out there, Ivan Ortiz, 22-year-old closer, coming off a torn flexor tendon. Certainly does not look like somebody who we would be willing to guarantee a roster spot to. Scouting director recommends that we do Aldo Ramirez, a 28-year-old starting pitcher from Mexico. Out for 5 months with a torn rotator cuff. Yeah, I don't see that happening. What's he done at the major league level? 88 ERA plus, 101 FIP minus. So close-ish I guess, to an average major league pitcher. Coming off of a major injury, though. Making $1.26 million. Just doesn't have great stuff. Doesn't have much movement. Doesn't throw that hard. Just not that excited about our scouting director recommendation. Sorry, Travis. There's really not a ton in this Rule 5 draft. Cole Waits is meh. Not a great work ethic. Also making $4 million a year. Edison Suriel was kind of interesting, but the control is just so bad. I mean, he's got really good stuff, really good movement, extreme ground ball pitcher, but he's making $4.3 million. And, you know, with that brutal control over the course of his brief major league career, he's walked 16 batters in 23 and 2/3 innings. His ERA plus is average-ish. His FIP minus does suggest that there's something there. I just don't know that I want to be paying $4 million to take a chance on him. Tony Gonsolin is coming off of a shoulder impingement. Again, just not a great profile. You know, the nice thing about him is he could start in a pinch. He does have decent stamina in 4 pitches, but again, he's making like $3.1 million a year. I think we can find somebody better in free agency in a couple of months who just hasn't gotten an offer. So I think Brian Matoya may be the one person that we do try to bring on. $1.9 million, making less than any of the other people. Pretty good stuff, acceptable movement, not great control, but he at least over the course of his major league career has been a proven solid reliever with a 1.22 ERA plus, 93 FIP minus. Has been a decent pitcher. I don't know that we keep him. It's very possible that we return him to the Cardinals, but we are going to at least bring him into camp. So we are going to draft Brian Matoya, move back on to our next pick. Scouting director recommending that we take Bruce Zimmerman, young starter, or not a young starter, 34-year-old starter. He's got good stamina, I'll say that. He's got 4 average pitches, but overall his stuff, movement, and control just don't excite me. He is a lefty. He's on a minor league contract. We could bring him into camp, but I think even if we picked him with the second pick of the Rule 5 draft, given that we've got 38 players on our 40-man roster right now, and we're going to be signing we hope we're going to be signing Tim Anderson, which will push us up to 39. Would, you know, he be the next cut? I guess Wyatt Wendell. We could certainly cut him. There's other people, you know, some of these guys we just added to the 40-man roster ahead of the Rule 5 draft, but Victor Rosa, Juan Palomares, Nazir Muley, even Henry Ramos are not necessarily big guys for us. Jackson Choria, Juan Pablo Correa. There's definitely players that we could get rid of. So I guess we bring Zimmerman into camp. I don't think he's going to stick. He is a lefty. Has definitely been a below-average major league pitcher over the course of his career. I just don't think there's a lot there, but he's on a minor league contract. There's no risk, so we'll bring Zimmerman on board. And auto-drafting until our 3rd-round pick. Scouting director not even recommending we take anybody. I tend to agree with him. Looking at the draft log, you can see a lot went on in that first round when we took Matoya. Gonsolin ended up getting picked. But that's going to be it for this draft. I don't think we need anybody else. Our old buddy Chris Bubich is out there. Oof, he does not have much left at this point, it looks. He did okay in AAA last year, but another lefty arm, but only throws in the low 90s at this point. I don't think Bubich is the answer for us at this point in his career. So we've simmed ahead another week. Still waiting to hear from Tim Anderson. Trevor Rogers, we know, wants more money, but I'm kind of feeling like the pivot to Anderson makes sense. We didn't get Gutierrez, who doesn't want to do a minor league deal, but can certainly revisit things with him down the line potentially. But I want to kind of resolve the Rogers and Anderson situation before we potentially end this episode. So we're going to keep simming forward a little further to see who ends up being our big free agent acquisition for this offseason, or I guess also whether we end up making a big free agent acquisition this offseason. At this point, it looks like Anderson is, at least according to the star ratings, the best player who's still out there. And while we're waiting to hear from Tim Anderson, I don't think we're going to find anything out too exciting, but we're going to request another scouting report just to see if maybe we learn something new. I can't imagine that we will, given that he's not actually playing baseball right now, but if there are any red flags, want to do everything we can to possibly uncover them. And I guess at the very least, scouting him a little more, got him to give us a response, say that we're out in front, maybe he'll sign with us. Lee now views him as a 3.5-star player, not surprisingly. Looks like we think his home run power is a little less than we thought it was in the past. Still view him the same defensively, but again, he hasn't played baseball in over a year at this point. So it's kind of an interesting move, I think, for us to be basing our entire offseason around bringing on a super utility guy for $11 million a year, or I guess it's $10 million a year that we've actually offered him. But I just don't love the options that are out there. If things fall through with Anderson, could we revisit Trevor Rogers? It seems like maybe he's been bluffing, because I think it's been about a month since we last talked with him. And he keeps saying he wants more money, but I don't know who's really out there giving him an offer at this point. He was trying to play the Yankees against us, but doesn't seem like that's really materialized the way that he had and his agent had been trying to market it to us. And a very busy day for the Royals here on January 22nd. Rogers did end up moving on. He signed with Houston. Let's see what he signed for. $13.1 million a year. Kind of got the deal, at least in terms of structure, that we had offered him, with 2 guaranteed seasons followed by a team option. But 13.1, 12.5, 11.8. He definitely got paid, so good for Trevor Rogers, but that was more than we wanted to go. Fans very upset we didn't get him, but fans are ecstatic that we signed Tim Anderson. So we've got him for that $10 million a year deal. So that is going to be our big move for the offseason, obviously. You know, you can see, looking at the financials, that gives us just $5 million left for free agents. And if we put our scouting and development budgets back to the traditional levels that they've been at, that really leaves us with no money for free agents. So been an interesting offseason. Really just the one big move of adding Tim Anderson, which should help our offense a bit. We're definitely going to be a little light on pitching with the losses of Rogers and Roberts, but I think that hopefully bringing Graceffo back on board helps a little bit in terms of the starting rotation, and we'll end up seeing how the Rule 5 pitcher we picked up does. We've got a couple guys in the minor leagues looking for an opportunity, and there's still an option over the last month or so until spring training starts to maybe do a little bargain basement shopping in the free agent market and bring another pitcher onto the roster. You can see the net effect of adding Anderson and losing Rogers was still positive, putting fan interest back up to 92. We're selling season tickets at a even higher projected rate than we did last year, even though our ticket price is a bit higher. So It's been an interesting offseason, but hopefully one that positions the Royals to get back in the playoffs. And at least we have given manager Byron Nichols some options to think about at shortstop, bringing on Groshans at the beginning of the offseason, bringing on Tim Anderson now, and then obviously still having Bobby Witt Jr. in the fold. We at least have some options at shortstop for this upcoming season. So would love to hear from viewers how you think we've done so far in the off season. Obviously still a bit of time to go, but we'll cover the end of the off season and spring training and final cuts in our next episode as we prepare for the 2030 season with the Kansas City Royals. Until then, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.